thank you very much to everyone for coming to the temple today. I have been asked to give class. Pyari has asked me like 100 times and I've refused to do it. So finally I decided to surrender and said I have to try. So please bear with me if I'm not so good at some of our other speakers. I'm going to try and speak on this verse today. We are speaking from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 7, text 3. So I'm going to chant the verse first and you can repeat after me. Actually, I'm going to chant the whole verse first and then we can repeat. So let me chant the whole verse first. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatham api siddhanam kaschid mam veti tattvataha. And the meaning of this verse is, out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth.
Which verse again?
It is chapter 7, text 3.
What is the page number?
367. 367.
It's different in different books. So please repeat after me. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yadati siddhaye yadatam api siddhanam kaschin mam veti tattvataha. Manushyanam of men sahasreshu out of many thousands kaschid someone yadati endeavors siddhaye for perfection yadatam of those so endeavoring api indeed siddhanam of those who have achieved perfection kaschid someone mam me veti does know tattvataha in fact. Out of many thousands of men, one may endeavor for perfection, and those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So anyone wants to say this verse?
Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschid mam veti tattvataha.
Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschid mam veti tattvataha.
Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschid mam veti tattvataha.
Manushyanam sahasreshu
kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschid mam veti tattvataha. So out of many thousands of men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Purport. There are various grades of men, and out of many thousands, one may be sufficiently interested in transcendental realization to try to know what is the self, what is the body, and what is the absolute truth. Generally, mankind is simply engaged in animal propensities, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, and hardly anyone is interested in transcendental knowledge. The first 6 chapters of the Gita are meant for those who are interested in transcendental knowledge, in understanding the self, the super self, and the process of realization by jnana yoga, and discrimination of the self from matter. However, Krishna can be known only by persons who are in Krishna consciousness. Other transcendentalists may achieve impersonal Brahman realization, for this is easier than understanding Krishna. Krishna is the supreme person, but at the same time, he is beyond the knowledge of Brahman and Paramatma. The yogis and the jnanis are confused in their attempts to understand Krishna. Although the greatest of the impersonalists, Sripad Shankaracharya, has admitted in his Gita commentary that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his followers do not accept Krishna as such. For it is very difficult to know Krishna, even though one has transcendental realization of impersonal Brahman. This is really nice. Srila Prabhupada is saying that even though one might know Brahman or Paramatma realization, doesn't mean that they actually know Krishna in full. And even if one is a devotee of Krishna, it doesn't mean that he knows Krishna in full. It is very difficult to understand Krishna. Actually, no one can understand Krishna unless Krishna desires to reveal himself. So it's actually not possible to understand Krishna with our infinitesimal brains. We are infinitesimal and Krishna is infinite. So how can an infinitesimal brain understand Krishna's infinite personality? So that is not possible at all. So even if we think that we know Krishna, we really know Krishna, we can know Krishna's form, we can know Krishna's pastimes, we can understand it to some degree. But really we can never know Krishna unless Krishna decides to reveal himself. And most people, he says, in this world, are just interested in, engaged in animal propensities. They're not even interested in transcendental knowledge. Most people, majority of the people say eat, drink, and be merry because tomorrow may never come. People just want to enjoy life, they think this body is just for enjoying. Krishna has, yes, kindly given us these bodies, given us these different forms, given us these different situations so that we desired it, obviously, and that's why we got these material bodies. We would not be here if we did not desire to be here, enjoying separate from Krishna. But we have to understand what is the goal of life. What is the goal of this life? It's this body is so temporary, so ephemeral. If we, many of us have gone to at least one funeral or the other, and you see, we see these bodies, in the funeral home. It doesn't look any different than the person you knew, but that person has gone. Where has that person gone? No one asks these questions usually. Sometimes temporarily they think about it, but then just go and use this body for our sense gratification, for our enjoyment. We really don't understand what is our nature, what is our real nature, who are we within the body, that this is just a mobile home that we're living in, and this home is going to get destroyed. It's already getting destroyed little by little as we age. It is getting weaker and weaker, and the first 6 chapters of Jnana Yoga and Dhyana Yoga, which is impersonal Brahman realization and Paramatma realization. But Brahman realization, Paramatma realization is not really knowing Krishna. That is the Krishna's, effulgence is Brahman, and Krishna's, form, in our hearts is Paramatma, but it's not, the full understanding of Krishna. And he gives a very good example of Sripad Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya is an incarnation of Lord Shiva himself. And Shankaracharya came with a certain purpose in this world. And Lord Buddha is also Lord Krishna himself. There was a time in this world that people were indiscriminately killing animals in the name of the Vedas. They were doing animal sacrifices, and they said the Vedas, prescribe it. And in a different yuga, other than Kali Yuga, there were animal sacrifices, but they were Brahminical people who had the power of chanting certain mantras where that animal was sacrificed, in a fire sacrifice, and then that animal would come out with a higher birth, with a higher human birth. So in a sense, it was done for the benefit of the animals, and there was such power, in the Brahminical community of actually, achieving something like that. But, in Kali Yuga, everything is so degraded that it's just not possible. There are no Brahmins or no powerful such yogis who can do such a sacrifice. But people were indiscriminately killing animals in the name of the Vedas. So Lord Buddha came, and his greatest tenet was ahimsa. Ahimsa is, it's, what is the English word?
Non-violence.
Non-violence, thank you. So ahimsa is non-violence. So Buddha actually preached mainly non-violence. That was his greatest tenet. And in a sense, Buddhism was kind of nihilism or atheism to a degree, because Buddha really did not say that that the body was separate from the spirit and where you're going. Buddha just basically said, surrender unto me. But because he was Lord Krishna himself, that he was a Vishnu incarnation himself, his devotees or his followers surrendering into him was fine. So basically Buddha's greatest tenet was Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Sangam Sharanam Gacchami, Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami. So basically he was saying, surrender unto the Buddha, surrender unto his society, and surrender unto his instructions. So as long as they surrendered into that was fine. But he came to preach non-violence so that people would not be killing animals discriminately. But the strange part is a lot of Buddhists now do not follow ahimsa, which was his main tenet that he came to preach. So he wanted to get people away. So he actually rejected the Vedas. And only God can reject, his own words or his own scriptures. No one else can reject scriptures. None of us have the power to say, I'm going to reject scripture. You're a fool if you say you want to reject scripture that God himself gave. But Buddha rejected the scriptures because he wanted to get away people from the Vedas that they were using to kill animals. And if you kill animals, you're not going to understand the start of understanding religion or start understanding true religion or true spiritualities. At least you have to start from ahimsa. So he preached the tenet of ahimsa and the philosophy of ahimsa very greatly, and tried to bring people back into a more decent society where they could begin to understand spiritual matters better. But Shankaracharya also came with a purpose. He came with the purpose, he was Lord Shiva himself, with the purpose of bringing people back to the Vedas. He wanted to bring people back to the Vedic scriptures. And Buddhism was somewhat impersonal, so he had to kind of preach in a somewhat impersonal way, with Brahman realization as his main tenet, to bring people back to the Vedic scriptures. And he did that. He accomplished that goal. But at the same time, he's Lord Shiva. He's also known as Harihar. His Lord Shiva is only happy when he's in meditation of Hari. That's all he wants to do. And he's also known as Bholanath, and that's why he very easily gives boons. So whenever demoniac people like Hiranya, who are some of the people,
Ravan.
Yeah, Ravan, there was another demon that he gave the mantra of Mohini, that Vishnu had to come as Mohini to, this demon, he said anyone's head that he touches will die. And she, Bhasmasur, yeah. And Shiva is like, he does not want to be disturbed in his meditation of Hari. And sometimes he just gets tired when someone is deeply, into meditation of him and wants some boon. And he says, okay, you can have the boon. But he did it to his own detriment, and then this demon comes to kill Lord Shiva himself. And then Lord Shiva runs to Lord Vishnu. And Vishnu, of course, takes the form of Mohini and does this beautiful dance and attracts this Bhasmasura. And he does, you know how the Bharatanatyam, all the poses, you have to put some of your hands on your head. And Bhasmasura, of course, is so enamored and so attracted to Mohini that he puts his own hand on his head, and of course he dies, So obviously.
No, I don't know. Is this Mohini? twice he does. Mohini Murti is when the churning of the thing.
Then-
I think he takes the role of a Brahmin and he says, Lord Shiva has lost all his powers. Don't you know that? Ever since his father-in-law Daksha cursed him, he doesn't have any potency.
Okay.
You test that bull, touch your own head and see.
I see.
And then you can see what a liar he is. And then when he
You
touches
may be
his
right,
head,
yeah. I'm not exactly sure how it goes. But anyway, Vishnu takes, comes to the rescue of Shiva. Because Shiva easily gives boons. He does not think about it sometimes because he's so deeply engrossed in Hari. He does not want to be bothered in his to be disturbed in his meditations. He just simply gives away boons sometimes to get rid of these demons who are coming and asking him for boons. So Lord Shiva came with the intention of bringing people back to the Vedas as Shankaracharya. So Shankaracharya is no ordinary, devotee, and he really is not into complete Brahman realization. He came with a purpose of bringing people back to the Vedas, and that's why he preached Brahman realization more of the Mayavada school. But because he's Lord Shiva, his conclusion is not Brahman realization. His conclusion is not at all Brahman realization. If you understand, read Bhaja Govindam, his famous prayer, it is so completely Vaishnava and so completely surrendering to Lord Govinda or Lord Krishna. And I read a little more in detail as to what Bhaja Govindam says. Bhaja Govindam says, wealth and worries and even wealth and women and even family will not find you happiness. When one is fit and capable to earn money, everyone in the family will show affection. When the body is weak, no one will inquire after you. He says, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Modamate, Samprapte, Sanhite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukran Karine. He says, please, O fool, and he's actually preaching to a grammarian. That this Bhaja Govindam was written when he was preaching to a grammar expert. In those days, Sanskrit grammar, Sanskrit logic, Nyaya philosophy was very, appreciated very much in education, and they were considered very erudite and very highly educated. And so he tells them, what is the use of your great Sanskrit scholarship and your great Sanskrit, logic and grammar? That's not going to help you when the time of death comes. Please chant the name of Govinda. That is the only thing that will help you at the time of death. So Lord Shiva himself is saying this. And he says, when one is alive, people might inquire after you. But when life air has left the body, even your wife or husband is afraid of the corpse.
That's for sure.
So even the person who loved you the most is afraid of you. So that body can't be you. So that body doesn't really belong to you. We spend our whole life wasting in sports and attached to sex life and worrying about our own bodily needs, but not worrying about the purpose of life. Who are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going when we leave this body? This is Lord Shiva. This is Shankaracharya saying this. And we always think that Shankaracharya is more Mayavada. Shankaracharya really is Lord Shiva, the worshipper of Lord Hari. So this is his conclusion. Association, satsang of devotees is the only path to detachment and attachment to Govinda. When we understand the meaninglessness of this world and begin our attachment to Krishna's and his devotees' lotus feet, then Krishna begins to reveal himself to us. Lord Shiva himself is saying that unless we have attachment to his devotees' feet and we have attachment to his lotus feet, we cannot understand Krishna. Only then he will reveal himself to us. And he says, do not boast of wealth, friends. All this can be taken away in a flash. Seasons come and seasons go, but even our desires never leave us, even as we leave this body. Even as we leave this body, our desires don't go. And he says, only the company of devotees can act as a boat to take you out of the ocean of birth and death. So we need the association of devotees, satsanga. So Lord Shiva is talking like any other Vaishnava, great Vaishnava. He's not talking like, Mayavada philosopher as we think, most people think that Shankaracharya is. even an old, otherwise even an old man, weak in limbs, hairless, toothless, walking with a stick, cannot give up his desires. You know, you're old, you know, your limbs are old, you're hairless, toothless, you know, walking with a stick, and still you have desires, you know. We know so many men in the West, you know, who still go, you know, after sex, and they're like completely at the, you know, portal of death, and still their desires don't leave you. But he also warns, wearing devotee clothes, tilak, and doing bath in sacred rivers, and observing fast will not make you a devotee. He says that. Without true knowledge, without fixing your mind on the son of Nanda, you know, you will not, you know, attain salvation. Those who study Gita, even a little, drink just a drop of the holy Ganges, and worship Lord Krishna with love even once, Yama, the Lord of Death, does not have control over you. Just once, if you call upon the name of Krishna.
Can you repeat that again?
He says, those who study Gita, even a little, drink just a drop of the holy Ganges, and worship Lord Krishna with love even once, Yama, the Lord of Death, cannot have control over you. This is Shankaracharya's Bhajagovindam. This is verse after verse, you know. Beautiful verses. Taking birth in a mother's womb and dying again and again, it is difficult to cross this world. O Murari, please help me through your mercy. So it's Krishna's mercy. It is his devotee's mercy. That's the only thing that can actually take us across this ocean of birth and death. With our own efforts, we can't do it. But does that mean that we should not make any efforts? No. I mean, if we are not sincere, if we are not showing some effort, that is meaningless. That's lip service, saying, oh, Krishna, you know, I'm surrendered unto you. That doesn't mean anything. You know, we have to show our efforts. We have to show our sincerity. We have to have a desire. It's like that little bird, you know, that Jatayu came to his help. You know, the ocean was taking away his eggs, and the little bird was getting very upset, and, you know, and he said, like, you cannot take my little, you know, eggs, and you cannot take my children. And he goes after the ocean and trying to save his children, and he tries to, he says, I'm going to empty you. And he starts emptying the ocean with his little beak. And of course, the ocean is like laughing, you know, how can you do anything, you know, it doesn't. But then Jatayu sees, Garuda sees that this little bird is trying to save his children, and Garuda comes to his rescue. And as soon as Garuda comes, the ocean is, you know, extremely afraid, because he knows Garuda has the power to do anything to the ocean. He can empty the ocean, he can do it. So this is our situation. We are like the little bird, you know, we cannot really do much. But we have to show that we are going to put the effort, we're going to show the sincerity, that we are going to, you know, surrender to Krishna and do devotional service with the best of our efforts. And when we do with the best of our efforts, then someone like, you know, with the mercy of our Guru, like a Garuda, we will get some help. We will get some, you know, support to go back to Godhead. To, you know, actually, Krishna will say, okay, I have recommendation. You know, a pure devotee of mine has recommended her, so she might be okay, I might take her back. But with our own efforts, it's not going to happen. But at the same time, we have to make the effort, we have to show the sincerity that we have the desire to do that. And that's when, you know, we will get help, and Krishna will reveal himself little by little to us with our sincerity and our efforts. And he says, in Shankaracharya's Bhajagovindam, who are you? Who am I? From where did I come from? Who is my real mother and father? Ponder over this, and when you understand this, you will understand that this world is a meaningless dream. You know, this Prabhupada says that many, many times, that this is a daydream, and, you know, what we have at night is a night dream. This is really a dream, and Bhajagovindam stresses it so much. It says that all our relatives, all our sons, our daughters, that we think that we are so attached to, you know, that our families, our friends, everything that we feel that we are so connected to, because we think we are these bodies. You know, we think almost all the time we think we are these bodies, and we think we are so connected to all these people. But when we die, you know, we're leaving this body. we just do not understand that we're leaving this body. We are not this body. We are leaving this body. This is very temporary. And when we leave this body, where is our connection to the son? Where is our connection to the daughter? Where is the connection to the relatives? Where is the connection to the land? Some people think like, oh, I'm Indian, I'm American, I'm Russian, I'm Chinese. Where is our relationship to the land? In our next life, we could be born anywhere. We could be born in a different country, in a different body, in different family. So how can we say we are connected to any of this? So this is really a dream. It has to be a dream. Because when we, when it's like a night dream. When the night dream stops, in the morning, like, oh, thank God it was a dream. You're happy. So if you go back to Krishna, you feel like, thank God all that material suffering is done and it's over with and that misery is done with. I'm back home where I really belong. And I think, who is that Kannada bhakta who says, Yogeshanananda Puradaliruvudu Vittu Hegiddu Hegadeyo. I used to, Purandar Das, yeah. He says, I used to live in Yogesha's, Krishna's, Anandapura, the most beautiful world. And how did I come to this miserable material world? How, through so many yonis, to so many wombs, through so many lifetimes after species, so many lifetimes after lifetimes, how did I come here? When I had this beautiful situation in Yogesha's Anandapura, how did I come to this situation? How did I come to this place? So the bhaktas really understand that, So that is where we have to go back to. And Shankaracharya says, Lord Vishnu resides in you and everything else. So be tolerant and compassionate to everyone. Practice equanimity in all things. Prashanta. Srila Prabhupada constantly uses the word prashanta. Prashanta means equanimity. And if you surrender to the lotus feet of Krishna, he says you will get equanimity, and your mind will be automatically controlled. If you surrender to the holy name and surrender to the lotus feet of Krishna, he says then you will be known as Jitatmana, somebody who has conquered your mind. And the mind is not easy to conquer. Arjuna said the mind is like the wind. The mind is faster than the wind. It's not easy to conquer. And the only time you can conquer is when you surrender to the lotus feet of Krishna, when you surrender to the holy name. And as we all know, in this Kali Yuga, the only hope is, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalau nasteva eva gatiranyata. There is no other gati, there's no other
way.
Huh?
No other way.
Yeah, no other way or no other, route back to Godhead except through the holy name. Because Krishna has invested all of his potency in his name in this Kali Yuga. Because he knew this Kali Yuga is the age of iron, this Kali Yuga is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. It is so difficult here. In Satya Yuga and other yugas, people meditated for 60,000 years. 60,000 years to gain, understanding and knowledge of Krishna and to understanding of God. What will our little morning meditation of 1 hour and and can we control our mind? No. A lot of people think that just by simple meditation that they're just absorbing themselves in in God. Your mind is our best sense. That they say even as you're dying, that's the last sense to go. Your other bodily senses, slowly start disappearing as your body is failing you and as you're dying. But your hearing stays with you even as you're dying. That's the last sense that stays with you. So your hearing is your strongest sense. So if you hear the name of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As you're hearing, you're connecting with Krishna, you're connecting with the holy name, you're connecting with what Krishna has invested all of his potency in this yuga. Krishna has, that is me. In this age, that is me. In other ages, you might have been able to worship the deity. There might be elaborate ways of worshiping the deity. There were sacrifices, elaborate sacrifices. There were brahmanas who are very qualified, who could deliver a lot of things to you with their sacrifices. But in this age is such a fallen age. What do we have time for besides going to work, taking care of our children? How much time do we have? And Prabhupada has made it so easy for us. When first Srila Prabhupada started initiating people, he said like 64 rounds, and then he said like 32. And then he said, okay, finally he said 16. Now Prabhupada was such a pure devotee, whatever he recommended, Krishna will accept. So just by doing 16 rounds a day, we can actually take ourselves back to Godhead. And if you listen to it, hear it. And Shankaracharya says this too. Give up all attachment to everything in this world. Give up material desires, anger, greed. If you don't understand the knowledge of self, you will come back to this world, a hidden hell, endlessly. This, really, you don't need more hell than coming back to this material world. I thought I read something in the Bhagavatam many years ago that Prahlad Maharaj is actually praying to Lord Nrsingadev, and he's saying, I'm not afraid of your fearful form, but I'm afraid of coming back to this material world. We should be that afraid. In fact, Prabhupada said many times, he said to his disciples, he said, none of you are sufficiently afraid of this material world. We're not sufficiently afraid of this material world. You should be extremely afraid of coming back here, because you don't know what you're going to come back as. You don't know what kind of situation you're going to have. Most of us here who are in this room have fairly good situations at this point. We have nice food, clothing, shelter. We're not suffering somewhere. We're not in some slum in Bombay just trying to do some hand-to-mouth living. No, we're not in any kind of situation like that. We're in a very good situation. So when we are in such a good situation, if we don't take advantage of this human form of life and try to go back to Godhead, we should be fearful. We should be extremely fearful. We should be sufficiently fearful to understand that we should take advantage of this human form of life and go back to Godhead in this human form of life and not come back here in any way, shape, or form. So even someone like Prahlad Maharaj is fearful. We should be, extremely fearful. He says, if you don't understand the knowledge of it, you will come back to this hidden hell. Sing the glories of Vishnu constantly, remembering his form in your heart. People use this body for pleasure, which gets diseased in the end. Though everything in this world ends in death, men do not give up sinful conduct. People use this body for pleasure, which gets diseased in the end. It doesn't get you anything. Your sense gratification doesn't get you anything. It's like a lose-lose situation. Why are we using this body for sense gratification when it is a lose-lose situation? And it gets diseased in the end and doesn't help you in any way. And everything in this world ends in death. Understand that material attachment is the cause of all troubles. It can't give a bit of true happiness. A rich man fears even his own son. When someone is very rich, he's afraid that as he gets older, and we have seen this. We have seen many, many rich men if they live to be over 80 years old and become infirm, then the son might actually take away all his wealth from him and put him in some old age home and not give him any attention. That happens. So, this material attachment is useless. Even your attachment to your son is useless. Even your son and children may not take care of you. It can't give a bit of true happiness. A rich man even fears his own son. This is the law of material riches everywhere. Live a regulated life. Chant the name of God with love and meditate with attention. And I love this actually. Shankaracharya says this in Vajigovardhan. Meditate with attention on the holy name of Krishna. Not just with attention, with utmost attention. He says, with utmost attention. Be dependent only on the lotus feet of your Guru. Through disciplined senses and mind, you can see the indwelling Lord in your heart. Don't be a mechanical follower of rules or deluded-minded friend. Chant Govinda, worship Govinda, love Govinda, as there is no other way to cross the life's ocean except lovingly remembering the holy names of Govinda. and this is important, lovingly remembering the holy name of Govinda. This is the gist of Bhaja Govindam of Shankaracharya. So how can you say by reading this a conclusion of Shankaracharya that actually Mayavada philosophy is the highest? When Shankaracharya himself is saying that, surrendering to the lotus feet of Govinda is the highest. And then Prabhupada says here, other transcendentalists may achieve impersonal, but for this is easier than understanding Krishna. Krishna is the supreme person, but at the same time he is beyond the knowledge of Brahman and Paramatma. The yogis and jnanis are confused in their attempts to understand Krishna. Although the greatest of the impersonalists, Sripad Shankaracharya, has admitted in his Gita commentary that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, his followers do not accept Krishna as such, for it is very difficult to know Krishna, even though one has transcendental realization of Brahman, of impersonal Brahman. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the primeval Lord Govinda. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govindam Sarva Karana Karanam. It is very difficult for the non-devotee to know him. Although non-devotees declare that the path of bhakti or devotional service is very easy, they cannot practice it. If the path of bhakti is so easy as the non-devotee class of men proclaim, then why do they take up the difficult path? Actually, the path of bhakti is not easy. The so-called path of bhakti practiced by unauthorized persons without knowledge of bhakti may be easy. But when practiced factually, according to the rules and regulations, the speculative scholars and philosophers fall away from the path. Srila Rupa Goswami writes in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidim Vina Aikantiki Harer Bhaktir Upatayaiva Kalpate. Devotional service of the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Narada Pancharatra is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. So here Prabhupada has quoted Shankaracharya, Prabhupada has quoted Lord Brahma, Shankaracharya, as we have spoken earlier, is Lord Shiva himself, and there is Lord Brahma, speaking. So when we have the endorsement of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, that Govinda, that the lotus feet of Govinda is the highest, what greater endorsement do we need? What greater proof do we need when these personalities are saying, surrender unto the lotus feet of Govinda, surrender unto Guru is the highest, in the practice of religion. So we don't need to hear from anybody when such great personalities are coming to these conclusions. So bhakti without rules or regulations is a waste of time. So Srila Rupa Goswami is saying, people think that, bhakti yoga is very easy. A lot of, and that is the greatest detriment to bhakti today in Kali Yuga, all of this impersonal philosophy. The impersonal philosophers say, oh, our meditation is so great, what is your little, chanting and your deity. The deity form is just like a direction to the impersonal Brahman. But that is not true. Such great personalities as Rupa Goswami are saying, without following, what they call bhakti is really not bhakti. True bhakti is very difficult, is extremely difficult, and they fall away, the Mayavadi people, when they try, the impersonal philosophers, if they really tried to follow bhakti, they would fall away, he says, because it is a difficult path. Following the regulative principles, eating no meat, fish and eggs, and eating, only prasadam, offering to Krishna, no gambling, no, illicit sex, and chanting the names of the Lord, to understand Krishna is not easy. It's not at all easy. If it was that easy, everyone would do it. It's not simple, it's not easy. So what the impersonalists say is completely incorrect. They just want to, deride Krishna. And so even when Krishna himself was present 5,000 years ago, people did not understand him as Krishna. So in Krishna's presence, when people are putting him down, people like Duryodhana were putting him down, So what to speak in this age, in this Kali Yuga, this age of quarrel and hypocrisy. So it is to be expected that there are going to be people will deride him. But intelligent people, Srila Prabhupada always says intelligent people. Intelligent people will try to understand this and understand that Bhakti Yoga is not easy, that we need effort, we need to do our best. But at the same time, Krishna will help. Prabhupada says Krishna will help his devotees. He will always help his devotees. If we take one step towards Krishna, he will take 10 steps towards us. And he says, bhakti without rules and regulations is a waste of time. It's Prabhupada constantly quoted, it's like an elephant who takes a bath, in the lake, and then comes and puts a lot of mud on his back, So it's like, we know a lot of people who do a little bit of, puja part in the morning, and then in the evening they will have a nice party and eat some meat and drink some drinks, and then they think that they are actually following the bhakti path, but that is exactly like an elephant who just takes it's a good thing that they're doing something, it's better than nothing, but at the same time it is not going to benefit them. It is going to be like the elephant who takes a bath and then puts a lot of mud on his back and makes himself dirty again. So that kind of bhakti is not going to help you. And this verse says, only 1 in 1,000 really know Krishna in fact. Understanding him as the son of Yashoda, understanding him as the charioteer of Arjuna, that is a junior role that Krishna took to Yashoda, a service role that Krishna took to Arjuna, to his devotees, is hard to understand. Even demigods like Indra and Brahma do not understand that. Indra was thinking, who is this little boy in Vrindavan that everybody is listening to? And not doing my, worship that they did of Indra, and they're listening to this little boy and that he's asking them to worship Govardhan Hill, So Indra, as such a great demigod, could not understand Krishna. He just thought like he's just this powerful little boy, and everybody is like worshipping him and thinking great of him. So Indra did not, Brahma did not understand him. Brahma hid the cowherd boys, thinking like, let me test him, like if he's really the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the demigods like Indra and Brahma do not understand him. So it is not easy to understand him, as the son of Yashoda and his charioteer of Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada used to say, like, a lot of people would challenge him. Do you know God? How can you know God? Tell us how we can know God, like as if knowing God is like so cheap and so easy. And I think in Australia, actually, I think somewhere in Australia, I believe, I'm not sure exactly where, he was giving a lecture to a large group of people. And this one person comes and he starts ranting, I'm God, you're God, everybody is God, and we're all God, and he starts preaching this great thing, and he goes on and on and on and ranting and raving about for a long time, and actually disturbs Prabhupada's lecture for almost like 5 to 10 minutes, and the audience is a little, it puts kind of a disturbance in the audience, and they think like Prabhupada has lost control of the lecture. And then after he stops, Prabhupada, the whole lecture hall becomes like pin drop silence after he has stopped saying whatever he was saying. And then Prabhupada deliberately stops for a few minutes, and then he says to the person, "You're God, and that's all you had to say?" And the whole audience starts clapping because they understood that. And he says, God is not that cheap, that you can just rant and rave about a little bit and you think you're God. God is, it's not easy to understand. God is very difficult to understand. But if you follow the process, if you follow the process given by, our acharyas, then, God is actually easy to understand. If we surrender into his lotus feet, surrender into the holy name, little by little, Krishna starts revealing himself to you. Krishna says no one knows him in full, and if one does know him, he's a very rare person. Great scholarship, philosophy. If you consider yourself a great scholar, and just because you consider yourself a great philosopher, or if you're just a puffed up devotee, you cannot understand Krishna. Krishna is understood only with humility. Only those who are humble and do surrendered devotional service can, one understand Krishna. If you consider yourself the servant of the servant of the servant, dasana, dasana, dasa. We have some stories. I come from a hometown in southern India, and there is a place called Udupi, where Kanakadasa was a great devotee in 1500s, 1509. He actually lived for 100 years, from 1509 to 1609. And he was a great chieftain of that region. And he fought many wars, because he wanted some territory and he wanted to make himself, a great person. And in fact, he found a lot of gold. He owned a lot of gold, mines and things like that. And he was even known as Kanakanayaka. Kanaka means gold, in the southern languages. So, but one time when he was fighting in one of the wars, he gets very wounded. And Krishna actually helps him. He sees Krishna helping him through that, when he's wounded on the battlefield. And Krishna restores him to health. And he suddenly gets this divine revelation. And after that, he becomes, starts reading about Krishna and starts understanding Krishna and takes initiation under Vyasaraya, who was one of the, gurus of that time. And he, in Udupi, Udupi is a Pita, of Madhvacharya actually. And we come from the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya also. And in Udupi there is a deity of Krishna that Madhvacharya actually found and installed in Udupi. And Kanakadas comes with great devotion and chanting Krishna's names, in front of the temple. And the temple brahmanas were caste brahmanas, were like very discriminating at the time and thought very puffed up, obviously, and thought that they were great philosophers and great followers of the Shastras and the Vedas. And Kanakadas belonged to a lower caste family, and they would not allow him into the temple. But Kanakadasa, camps himself outside the temple and starts chanting fervently, starts, poems. He makes a lot of poems to Krishna, starts singing bhajans, and heartfelt songs. Keeps on singing and singing and singing and singing in front of the temple. And these caste brahmanas are still not letting him in. And that goes to show Krishna only cares for, Krishna. All the wealth in this world belongs to Krishna. So Krishna does not care for wealth. Krishna does not care for anything. Krishna cares for love. So Prabhupada says, Premadhana. Premadhana is the greatest wealth you can have, And Kanakadasa had Premadhana. So Krishna does not care for these caste brahmanas. Usually temples in India are built facing the east. And the caste brahmanas finally tell him, you can go to the back of the temple and see in some little window if you can, want to see the inside the temple. So he goes to this little window in the back, and the entire wall of the inside sanctum falls down. The entire wall of the outside temple falls down, and Krishna turns himself from the east to the west. And Kanakadasa gets full view of the deity. When here these brahmanas are giving, arti to the back of Krishna, and Krishna has turned towards Kanakadasa. So this is Krishna's love. Krishna does not care for all this puffed upness. Krishna does not care for, any kind of wealth. If his devotee is sincerely and calling out with devotion and love, and I have seen it with my own eyes. I used to think when I was younger, in my teenage years, I really did not understand how a deity could be Krishna. But I understood when I went to this temple, how can the deity not be Krishna if he turned himself towards Kanakadasa? Because he called himself with such love and devotion, he turned. And even to this day, people can only see him through a little window, and the deity is permanently, turned towards the west and not the east. So the front door of the temple, does not see Krishna. You have to go to the back of the temple to actually see Krishna. So Krishna, only reveals himself, to humble devotees and who, call upon him with a humble service mood. Prabhupada's, said this to so many of his disciples, he felt compassion towards all souls and was willing to work day and night and give up all comforts in his ripe old age. Prabhupada could have retired nicely. He came here at 69. Instead of retiring, he came here and he worked day and night. He did not sit for 1 minute. He slept for only a couple, 2-3 hours in the night, and he translated books during the night and, worked so hard trying to deliver so many fallen souls, to take them back to Godhead. None of us would be here without Srila Prabhupada. But because Srila Prabhupada was a pure devotee and, 1 in 1,000 men, and obviously, Srila Prabhupada was a pure devotee, Krishna helped Srila Prabhupada to grow this movement from a lone sannyasi in Boston to this worldwide movement that it is today. His sincerity, his humility, in spite of his erudition and personal relationship with Krishna, is what endears him to all of us. Prabhupada's humility was like beyond compare, even though he knew so much, he quoted, in every one of his lectures you can hear him quoting so many Sanskrit verses. He had such great memory. In fact, I recently saw his little clip with George Harrison and who was the other one? John Lennon, yeah, John Lennon and George Harrison. Yeah, he had a little conversation with them. And because they were musicians, he, in this perfect meter, chants the Bhagavatam, about so many verses, dozen verses from memory, and he chants in this very specific meter, musical meter, and it's so impressive that he can remember every single verse. Just keeps on chanting for quite a few minutes, and they are so impressed that he can chant and sing in that meter, even in this age. Devotional service of the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic scriptures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Narada Pancharatra is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. It is not possible for the Brahman realized impersonalist or the Paramatma realized yogi to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the son of Mother Yashoda and the charioteer of Arjuna. Even the great demigods are sometimes confused about Krishna. Muryanti sat surayaha mam tu veda nakaschana. No one knows me as I am, the Lord says. If one does not know me, then Samahatmas, if one does know me, then Samahatmas Sudurlabha. Such a great soul is very rare. Therefore, unless one practices devotional service to the Lord, one cannot know Krishna as he is, even though he is a great scholar or philosopher. Only the pure devotees can know something of the inconceivable transcendental qualities in Krishna. And even that, he says, pure devotees can know something. Doesn't even say everything about Krishna. His being the cause of all causes, his omnipotence and opulence, and his wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Because Krishna is benevolently inclined to his devotees, he is the last word in Brahman realization, and the devotee alone can realize him as he is. Therefore it is said, Atashri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahyam indriyai sevan mukehi jivadyav swayam eva spuratya adaha. No one can understand Krishna as he is by the blunt material senses, but he reveals himself to his devotees, being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service unto him. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So, so it's Srila Prabhupada gave a lecture in 1966. I was listening to this archival lecture. So Prabhupada says that Krishna's lotus feet is like a fort. It always protects the mind from material disturbances. So if we actually take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, it becomes like a fort. And that gives you the shelter from all the material disturbances. Otherwise, it's very difficult. We have so many. It's so easy to make compromises. There are so many temptations, so many fears. in this material world, we have to come across so many different situations that it's not easy to be in that perfect devotional mood all the time, and follow all of our principles all the time. And it's so easy with all the temptations and fears to make some, necessary compromise. But we can overcome the dualities of this material world by experiencing something higher, despite all the reversals of the world. I mean, why are some devotees, they have, medical degrees, they have PhDs, and still they are full-time devotees? What are they getting out? They're experiencing some much higher, happiness, much higher bliss. Otherwise they would not give up all this, material. They could have had great jobs, they could have made a lot of money, they could have, situated themselves with, big houses, with a medical degree and a PhD. But still they give up all this because you can overcome the dualities of the material world by experiencing something higher, despite all the reversals of the world. So even if there are reversals, if there are difficulties, once you actually taste the true nectar of the holy name of Krishna, nothing matters. You become kind of mad after Krishna, you become mad after the holy name, and you recognize that my true goal is to get out of here. I think one time in London, Prabhupada came to the airport, and Indradevna Maharaj was left behind at the airport to bring one of Srila Prabhupada's very big, heavy suitcases with books. Trunk, actually. And Indradevna Maharaj felt like all the devotees are like gone, I'm not getting association of Srila Prabhupada, and he's bringing this, trunk. And it was so heavy, he says, he had to bring it up like one step at a time to Prabhupada's room. And he brings it like one step at a time, and then he brings it into Prabhupada's room, and when he comes, like, all the prasadam is gone. And that too, Jamuna Devi had cooked. The best prasadam ever. And no prasadam left for this Indradevna Das at the time. And he's like so disappointed, and one step at a time, he's like so tired. And then he did not even realize Prabhupada was in the room, so he like just very brashly brings this trunk into the room, not even seeing Prabhupada there. But then Prabhupada puts his hand on his back, and he says, it is so difficult here in this material world, but when I take you back to Godhead, it will all be so easy. And Indradevna Maharaj feels like, oh, this was worth not having prasadam, not having anything. And Guru Maharaj putting his hand on my back and saying, when I take you back to Godhead, he's pretty much guaranteeing that he's taking him back to Godhead. When I take you back to Godhead, it will all be very easy and wonderful and blissful, So everything here is an endeavor, even though, so Indradevna Maharaj recognizes all the endeavor in this world is, no matter, despite all the reversals in this world, if you're experiencing something higher, you can overcome the dualities of this material world. So I don't know what time is it. Is it almost time?
You are so good, we want to
I
continue.
know, I didn't give it time for any questions, I'm sorry. I was like afraid I would not make the time, so I kept on talking. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Amit.
I have two comments.
Mm-hmm.
As you were quoting the Bhajagovindam and the verse which you talked about where Shankaracharya is stressing on utmost attention on the holy name.
Mm-hmm.
And Prabhupada purport also mentioned about how do we get Krishna's attention.
Mm-hmm.
That during chanting it's only through humility.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no pride in our heart. And when we chant in that mood, Krishna listened to our chanting. And that kind of connects very well with last week's lecture about Kunti's prayer. And I think Prabhupada Maharaj was quoting one of the verse from Kunti's prayer that when we are finally exhausted with all kinds of pride,
materially exhausted,
which is
yes.
coming out of wealth or beauty or fame or power, when completely exhausted of all those kind of prides, we can call out Krishna's name.
Yes.
And it is then when Krishna would listen to our chanting. So it kind of connects well with Kunti's
Yes,
prayer.
yes. He
And,
was a great personality.
And second thing which I was thinking about when you were quoting the story of Kanak Das, and you mentioned that the biggest wealth which we can acquire in this world is a premadana, which is the love for Krishna. It kind of the same word is used by Narottam Das Thakur in one of his famous songs, that Hari Hari Bifale Janava Goinu. Gono Kera Premadana Hari Nama Sankirtana.
Yeah.
So it kind of connects well with that song. So I just thought of sharing.
I just have one quick comment, just one sentence. Like you were comparing the Mayavadis with Vaishnavas, you know. And in all Vaishnava literatures in the history of the universe, there are many instances where Mayavadis have turned and become Vaishnavas, but there's not one single instance where Vaishnava has become a Mayavadi.
Yes.
Like the four Kumaras are example of Vaishnava, and even Shukadeva Goswami himself started as an impersonalist and became the greatest personalist. And then in Chaitanya Leela, Prabodhananda Saraswati and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, two great scholars at that time, became Vaishnavas. You know, so not one single instance where Vaishnava became an impersonalist.
How can we? How can we leave Krishna?
So that clearly shows that under no circumstance Vaishnavism is far superior to anything.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone.
Prabhupada.
गीता माला माता जी की जय।